There are two boys on a road in Anatolia. One of them is 11 years old. The other is 4. They are riding under Ottoman escort toward a fortress in the interior of the Anatolian plateau, a place called Egrigaz, which means roughly the crooked eye, which is either a geographic description or an omen, depending on how you read what happened inside it. They have been taken from their father at a place called Gallipoli. Their father is riding the other way. He is not dead yet. He will be in 5 years. The 11-year-old's name is Vlad. The 4-year-old's name is Radu. Their father is Vlad II Dracul, Prince of Wallachia, member of the Order of the Dragon, a man who has spent his entire career trying to survive between two empires that both want to own the territory he rules. He has just made the calculation that surrendering his children is the price of keeping his throne. It is the kind of calculation that the 15th century required of small state rulers with some regularity, and he made it. Vlad, who is 11, understands exactly what is happening. He and his brother are not prisoners in any formal sense. They will not be chained. They will be housed, fed, educated, trained in languages and statecraft and military arts. The Ottoman court is, by the standards of the 15th century, one of the most sophisticated and well-organized institutions in the world. What they are is collateral, human guarantees against their father's future behavior, whose comfort depends entirely on their father continuing to cooperate with the empire that holds them. And they both know what happens to collateral when the guarantor stops cooperating. They have seen what happened to the sons of the Serbian despot Durad Brankovic, who tried to escape Ottoman authority a year earlier. His sons were blinded. Vlad and Radu ride toward Egrigaz. They will not see Wallachia for 6 years. When they come back, only one of them will be the same person who left. You think you know this story. You know the name Dracula. You know the stakes. You know the vampire. You know nothing. The real Vlad III was more extraordinary, more brutal, more complicated, and more consequential than anything Bram Stoker imagined. It starts here with 2 boys on a road and a father who had to choose. Subscribe, like the video, and let's go back to where it actually begins. To understand Vlad III, you have to start with his father's name. Vlad II was called Dracul. In 15th century Romanian, Dracul meant 2 things simultaneously, dragon and devil, and the ambiguity was not accidental. He had earned the name in 1431, the same year his son was born, when the Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund inducted him into the Order of the Dragon. The order was a chivalric military society, 24 knights sworn to defend Christian Europe against the Ottoman Empire, modeled on the crusading orders of the Middle Ages, bearing the dragon as their symbol. The dragon. The protector. The fighter of evil. Vlad II wore the dragon on his coins, on his seals, on his official documents. His son, born into the household of a man who wore this symbol, grew up knowing that his family's identity was defined by opposition to the Ottoman Empire. The name Dracula, Draculia in Romanian, meant simply son of Dracul, son of the dragon, son of the devil. The ambiguity traveled with the name across generations. The problem with being a defender of Christian Europe against the Ottomans when you are the Prince of Wallachia, a small principality with no natural defenses, situated directly between the Ottoman Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary, is that the commitment requires constant renegotiation with reality. Vlad II spent his reign performing precisely the calculation that defines small state survival in a world of great powers. Say what the larger power needs to hear, do what the situation actually requires, survive until tomorrow. He was not a coward. He was a realist. He told the Ottomans he was their man and the Hungarians he was their man, and he calibrated the relationship with both based on which one was more dangerous to him at any given moment. This worked more or less for 15 years. Then it stopped working. March 1442. The Ottoman Sultan Murad II had been watching Vlad II Dracul's flexible loyalties with increasing impatience. When Vlad refused to support an Ottoman invasion of Transylvania, Murad summoned him to Gallipoli to demonstrate his commitment in person. Vlad II went. He had no real choice. Refusing a summons from the Sultan was a declaration of war that his principality could not survive. He traveled to Gallipoli with his 2 younger sons. The meeting was not, by any account that survives, comfortable. The Sultan made clear what he expected. Vlad II made clear what he could and could not provide. They reached an agreement. The terms included paying an annual tribute of 10,000 gold ducats, delivering 500 boys for the Divserm, the Ottoman child levy that produced janissaries and court officials, maintaining neutrality in Ottoman military operations against Hungary, and leaving his sons behind. When Vlad II rode back to Wallachia, Vlad and Radu stayed at Gallipoli. They were transferred to the fortress of Egrigaz in the Anatolian interior, well away from the Wallachian border, well away from any possibility of rescue or escape. Their education began. The education of an Ottoman royal hostage in the 15th century was, by the standards of the period, excellent. Languages first: Turkish, Greek, the administrative lingua franca of the empire. Then military arts, horsemanship, archery, the yataghan, the lance. Then statecraft, the mechanics of Ottoman governance, the structure of the court, the logic of imperial administration. The goal was explicit: produce men who, when they eventually returned to their home territories, would govern in ways compatible with Ottoman interests. Radu thrived. He was 4 years old when he arrived. The Ottoman court was not, in any meaningful sense, a foreign world to him. It was the only world he had ever consciously inhabited. He learned Turkish before he fully consolidated Romanian. He absorbed Ottoman culture from the inside out, with the complete openness of a child who has no prior world to compare it against. He caught the attention of Mehmed, Murad II's son, the future conqueror of Constantinople, then a prince of approximately Radu's age. The relationship between them, documented in later Greek chronicles with the particular delicacy that contemporaries applied to this kind of thing, was, by the accounts that survive, intimate. Mehmed and Radu, the Ottoman prince and the Wallachian hostage. Connected by proximity, by youth, by the hothouse intensity of a court where everyone was watching everyone else and personal alliances were survival mechanisms. Vlad watched all of this from a distance. He was 11 when he arrived. Old enough to know he had been surrendered. Old enough to remember Wallachia, to remember what his father's name meant, to understand that the empire that was now educating him had forced his father's hand. He learned Turkish. He learned to fight. He watched Radu become something he was not willing to become. What passed between the brothers during those years is not recorded in any source. What the sources record are the outcomes. Radu stayed. Vlad left the first chance he got. And when he came back as something the Ottoman court had not intended to create. 1447 The news arrived in stages, the way terrible news always does. First the rumor, then the confirmation, then the particular specific details that turn a political event into a personal one. Vlad II Drakel had been killed. John Hunyadi, the regent of Hungary, the man who had been playing the same game of great power manipulation from the Hungarian side, who had been alternately Vlad II's patron and his enemy for a decade, had finally decided that Vlad's flexible loyalties were more trouble than his compliance was worth. He invaded Wallachia in November 1447. He installed a new prince. He had Vlad II arrested. The execution was not a battlefield death. The sources describe it as scalping, not the American Indian method, but the Ottoman one, which meant cutting along the edges of the face and pulling the skin off while the man was still alive and conscious. It was the kind of death that sent a message about what the executioner thought of the victim's dignity. Vlad II Drakel, member of the Order of the Dragon, father of 2 hostages in Ottoman custody, prince who had spent 15 years trying to survive between 2 empires, died in agony, executed by agents of a Hungarian regent who owed him nothing. The same year, Vlad's eldest brother Mircea was captured by Hunyadi's Wallachian allies. He was blinded with hot iron stakes. Then while he was still alive he was buried. Vlad was 16 years old when this happened. The sources do not record what he felt. What they record is what he did, which is that from this moment forward, every decision Vlad III made for the rest of his life was organized around a single understanding of the world that the events of 1447 had made absolutely clear to him. There were no rules. Not really. There were powers, and there were the things powers did to get what they wanted, and there was the question of whether you were strong enough to resist them or weak enough to be destroyed by them. His father had tried to be smart. His father had tried to be flexible, to read the situation, to survive through calculation. It hadn't worked. His brother Mircea had been smart. Mircea was buried alive. What you needed to survive in this world was not intelligence or flexibility or diplomatic skill, though you needed all of those. What you needed, underneath everything else, was a willingness to do what other people were not willing to do. A capacity for violence that made the men calculating whether to cross you understand that the calculation was not worth the outcome. Vlad filed this away. He was 16. He had 6 years in the Ottoman court still to go. 6 years to watch and learn and prepare. He used them. The Ottoman court of Murad II in the 1440s was one of the most sophisticated military organizations in the world. Vlad watched it from the inside. He watched how an empire maintained control over dozens of different peoples across enormous distances, not through constant force, which was too expensive, but through the management of compliance. He watched how the divserm system worked, how boys taken from Christian families were converted, trained, and transformed into the most loyal soldiers in the empire, men who owed everything they had to the institution that had remade them. He watched how the Ottomans used impalement, the stake, as a public deterrent, planting victims along roads and at city gates as a visible message about what resistance cost. He watched Mehmed. Murad II's son was not, in these years, the terrifying military commander he would become. He was a young man of exceptional intelligence, educated in the same culture that was educating Vlad, interested in everything: military strategy, philosophy, poetry, architecture, the machinery of power in all its forms. He watched how Mehmed observed the world. How he calculated. How he never wasted a piece of information. Vlad did not become Ottoman. He never stopped being Wallachian, never stopped being his father's son, never stopped carrying the knowledge of 1447 in the part of himself that made decisions. But he learned. He learned the language of the empire completely, not just Turkish but the empire's logic, its methods, its assumptions about how power worked. He learned that the empire respected strength and exploited weakness with equal efficiency. That the way to survive in its orbit was not to be reliably loyal. His father had been reliably loyal and died for it, but to be unpredictable enough, dangerous enough, expensive enough to subdue that the calculus of conquest never quite came out in the empire's favor. He learned what the stake meant. Not as a method of execution only, though it was that. As a statement. As a communication in a language that crossed every barrier of culture and language and literacy. As a way of telling an empire that you understood its methods and were prepared to use them on anyone, including its envoys, including its soldiers, including 20,000 of its prisoners in a field outside a city that it thought it was going to take. He was not ready to use any of this yet. He was 17, 18, 19 years old, a hostage in a foreign court, with no army and no throne and a family that had been destroyed by the two empires between which he was trapped. But the education was complete. And in 1448, the Ottomans made a decision that changed everything. They let him go.